Today we're going to show you how to change the lower door cam on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a 5/16 nut driver and a 5/16 socket and ratchet. Let me show you how we do it. Now the first step in this repair will be to open the refrigerator door, and we'll turn the refrigerator off so that it's not running while we're doing the repair. If it has a dial type thermostat, simply turn the control to off, or if it has a push button start, stop, we'll turn it off with that manner. Next, we're going to empty any of the bins that are on the door and set that stuff aside. Now next we'll remove the hinge cover, and you can use either the ratchet or your nut driver. Remove that 5/16 screw that holds the cap to the hinge. And that will expose 3 5/16 screws that will need to be removed. You may need the ratchet to loosen these, so typically very tight. Now next we'll pivot that hinge around, just lift up on it slightly, turn it forward. Then we're going to pull the door towards you and carefully lift it off of the bottom hinge, and then we'll set it aside. Now next we'll need to remove the 5/16 screw that secures that cam to the lower hinge. And then just lift that cam completely off of the hinge and discard it. And we'll set the new cam over top of that hinge pin. Make sure it's pressed firmly down onto the hinge plate. And we'll replace the screw. Now when replacing the lower cam, you should also suspect that the one on the bottom of the door may be defective as well. So you may want to order them both at the same time. And the procedure for removing the one on the door will be very similar. You just have one screw to remove, and then you can pull the cam off and replace it as well. We also suggest that you may want to put a little bit of food grade grease or some silicone grease on that cam just to prevent excess wear. Now if you're replacing the one on the freezer door, you would also need to remove the lower kick plate and disconnect the water line if your model has a water dispenser in the door. They'll typically have a small collet type connector that will just simply depress the collet, pull the hose out, and feed it up through the hinge pin. Now we're ready to put the door back on. So we'll carefully lift that door up, and we'll line up the hinge pin. Let it sit down on the hinge, rotate it into place, then pivot the upper hinge into position. Replace the 3 screws. And we won't tighten these screws yet until we have them all just snugged up. At that point we will line up the door before we tighten them. Now to line up the door, we'll want to look at the gap between the freezer and fresh food door, and by pulling out or inward on that door. Make sure that we have it lined up, and then we can tighten those 3 screws securely. Then next we'll replace the hinge cap. Line up that single screw. And tighten that. Next, remember to turn the refrigerator back on. And our repair is complete.